Hi, today we're going to look at InDesign. InDesign is a great program for laying out pages. And you might think, well, Illustrator is a pretty good program for laying out pages too. And it is. And I've known people who do their layout in Photoshop. There's a lot of um, a lot of tasks cross the borders these days between the different applications in Creative Cloud. It didn't always used to be that way. Now you can lay out a pretty respectable page in any of the Creative Cloud apps. Where InDesign excels, however, is in multi-page documents and reports and booklets. So if I'm going to lay out one page or maybe 2 pages, I might do that in Illustrator still, especially if I'm more comfortable in it. But if I'm laying out 12 pages, 20 pages, 100 pages, that's a job for InDesign. There's a lot of tools that are specifically for that purpose, for multi-page documents, and it's just it's the right tool for the job. So because of the complexity of a multi-page booklet or an extended report, I'm talking 12, 24 pages, it's real easy to get bogged down in the complexities there. So I like to start InDesign with a simple project. So our cut sheet project here is only 2 pages. So it's nice and manageable. We can explore some of the InDesign tools that we would use on a longer booklet or report without getting bogged down in the complexity of it. That's why we start small when we're trying to learn these software apps. So let's think about the project. What is a cut sheet? Well, cut sheet's a bit of a loose term. It has different meanings in different disciplines. In architecture and engineering, a cut sheet refers to a detail from a larger construction document that focuses on one area of the project. So actual construction document pages can be large, 30 inches by 42 inches or even larger. And as the project moves on and it gets refined, maybe you've just got one detail with a doorway or with an entrance or something like that. And you don't want to issue another whole set, God forbid, or even a page when you're just trying to get out a simple message. So you'll do something called a cut sheet, and it's usually on letter size or tabloid size, and it's a smaller piece of the plan when you're just focusing on one thing. The phrases come to be used in our office to mean a promotional piece. And that's how I'm sort of using it here. So I'm not sure if anyone else uses it in this way. But basically what I'm referring to when I'm talking about a cut sheet here is a single sheet of paper, although we're doing 2, so you'll have 2 to pick from or combine. And it is a promotional piece about you. And it works on a couple of different levels. The content of the page, which you will choose and develop and edit, tells something about your expertise in planning. The very fact that this page exists and looks great and is printed on paper, that tells people who look at it something about your skills in doing page layout and producing a report. And I like this idea because it's not even spoken, but the presence, the very physical presence of this thing demonstrates that you can do this. So that's why I like cut sheets. And past students have told me that they've found it useful in interviews, and that's sort of the idea. You may have a large body of work that you'd like to show a potential employer, but you can't make them look at it. You can only show their work when you're asked to show the work. You can't just bust out your portfolio or start a slide presentation without being asked to do so. And in my case, and probably I feel in a lot of people's cases, it's the work that's going to get them the job, not necessarily the resume, not necessarily their stellar interview skills. But if I can show you my work, if I can make you see my work, then you're understanding who I am and what I can do. And so the idea with the cut sheet is it's sort of sneaky. It's a little harmless one-page thing, and no one needs to ask permission to have, oops, a page on the table with their resume that's graphic and punchy and demonstrates your skills. It can almost be like a page 2 to your resume, and I'm one of the people who believe a resume should be one page only. So I would often include something like a cut sheet as a page 2 because it's inoffensive. But like I say, you can't include a whole portfolio unsolicited. Also, again, thinking of this sort of like, imagined interview, it's something to talk about beyond the text of your resume. Not everyone is comfortable at interviews. Certainly applicants are almost always uncomfortable at some level, but also people who are doing the interviews often are not comfortable. They're not very often the professional HR people. They're the actual workers and managers in the firm, and they got things to do, and they don't want to be having to make up topics. And having done some hiring and firing in my own time, I dreaded interviews. They take up a lot of time. They sort of kill your day, and very often within the first couple of minutes whether the candidate is suitable or not, and then the whole goal is about shaking them loose and getting on with your day. So this is something to hopefully you won't be that guy. So this is something that can be on the conference room table with your resume, and it can generate more conversation germane to your future rather than just what's on your resume. So that's the idea behind these cut sheets. So the way this works is I'm giving you the layout of the page, and you're going to, similar to the first Illustrator exercise we did, the second Illustrator exercise we did, where you straight copied that site plan. I'm asking you to copy this layout, but you're going to provide the content. You're going to decide what the topic is, and you're going to write the copy, and you're going to add the specifics of the page. All I'm giving you is the layout of the page. So hopefully you end up with 2 tasks achieved here. You've learned a little something about InDesign if you don't already know it, and you end up with something that you might actually be able to use to punch up your to beef up your resume, or to give you some additional ammunition when you're walking into a job interview. That's the goal anyway. All right, so let's think about the idea of a page of promotional material first of all. So first, we're facing down the blank page, the dreaded blank page. Now, I never have actual blank page on my desk. I'm always going to have a grid at least, and start defaulting to grid paper when you're buying notebooks or pads. It's just much more useful, and especially for any kind of page layout. You really want some organizing principle in the grid. If you got this far reading your Meg's chapters, the grid is the still go-to organizing principle. So I'll have some grid. Also gives me some scale, subdivides the space, keeps me sort of thinking about the spatial aspects of the page. Next, what must go on there? Well, it's got to have a title, and it's got to have your name. It's got to have some identity. And enough said, it's simple, right? A lot of this is very simple, and we're just trying to sort of keep it organized. In addition to that, I like to include on these what we call a capsule description, and consider this like an executive summary. There might be a lot of text on this page, and by a lot of text I mean a couple of paragraphs, but people aren't going to read it, especially in an interview situation. But an executive summary, people tend to read. Actually, if you're ever doing a paper, even as a student, include an executive summary. It's a good idea. But aside from showing some mercy on your prof and letting them sort of, cut to the chase, it's a good way of keeping your own thoughts organized. You should be able to express complex ideas simply, and an executive summary does just that. All right, moving on to the actual content. A feature photo. That's taking up more than half the space on the page. This is a graphic communication tool, so you need something punchy. I say photo. Does it have to be a photo? It doesn't have to, but that's usually works best. It's it should be the best, most perfect photo you can find on this topic. You don't have to take it, but you have to find it. And not pixelated, so high res, something that just says the 1,000 words that you don't have room to say on here, right? And then we're going to add some body text, and here's where the writing portion and setting the type portion comes in. And not much. This isn't a 10-page research paper, but enough to sort of explore the topic, whatever that might be. What's a topic? Well, it could be something you're interested in. Maybe it's complete streets. Maybe it's urban agriculture. Maybe it's economic development. The samples that I'm going to show you and the template that you're going to use is based off a very technical topic. It's based off an engineering topic. I think it's flood control or something. But it doesn't have to be that. There's nothing about, as you can see, nothing about this layout that says it can only be used for something technical, right? This is a generic layout that you can use for anything. You can use it for a menu, food menu, right? You can use it for anything. Moving on, it's nice to have a quantitative graphic. What is a quantitative graphic? It's a pie chart, it's a bar chart, it's a graph. It's something that visually shows data associated with the topic. And now we've got a well-rounded page. We've got an idea, right? We've got the project. We've got a photo that communicates clearly what this is about. We've got a capsule description, the executive summary. We've got some body text that shows that you can write intelligently on the topic, that you know something about it. And we've got a quantitative graphic that adds a little sort of credibility to whatever it is that the topic is about. And don't forget, arguably the most important piece on this page, your identity, which can include UIC brand assets or not. You can make it just about you with your own contact information. So that's one page. The second page, very much like the first page, only we're going to add a few little specials. So these are typically like additional photo inserts. And this, while seemingly a minor alteration or minor addition, actually adds a lot of oomph to the page. It sort of really does add another dimension to the page. But that's the basics of it. That's the bare bones of what this is about. And just one word on those, adding those little specials before we get into the specifics of the project, or looking at some samples first. Notice how I took pains to align them in a certain way. They are organized, but they're not right on the border of that photo. By the way, we're going to fade that photo out anyway, so we shouldn't see a border. But this applies, I think, when laying out rectangles and squares, which we do a lot in general. You want to either be violating that border just over it, or fully inside that rectangle, however it's established, be it a photo or text or whatever. What I'm encouraging you to do is avoid placing it right on the line, as you can see in the third sample here. That's just really clumsy, and I see this all the time. It seems to be some real tendency for people who are beginning in layout to just want to line things up on other lines, and that's really clumsy layout. So break the line, obey the line with a little margin, but don't ever place things right on top of the line. It's pretty clumsy. Okay, with that, let's look at the technical samples that are included in the exercise on Blackboard. You'll find this exercise in the projects directory. Back in the before times, I used to separate out exercises from projects for different grade weight, the projects generally involving more work. So here we are, project 1, cut sheets. Ignore all the rest of this. This is going into 459, which used to run concurrently, but no longer does suddenly. Project 1, if we look at it, here is the deliverable and the assignment sheet. And here's the templates that are basically what I showed you, refined a little bit. If we look at these full-size samples, here we see the actual cut sheets that I did some years ago, from which the exercise is derived. So you'll recall we start with a title and our identity at the lower right, And then we have a capsule description. In this case, we're going to incorporate a little letterbox photo, a feature photo that takes up like most of the page, and some type, some quantitative graphics. So very much the template that I outlined. Now, when you look at these, you feel that they're very technical and oh my gosh, and can't do it. And here's the second one with the 3 specials. And that's the only difference. You can see it's nice, especially if you, as I did here, I used color photos for the specials and black and white for the feature photo. And you can come up with relationships like that. Maybe different, maybe the same, maybe contrasting, maybe texture, maybe real photo and illustration, or lots of relationships that you could set up where these have more meaning than just additional photos. You can see here's the quantitative graphic. So yeah, so these are a real thing that we would use when we go to pitch a client. I've redone them several times since these aren't used anymore, but I still kind of like them because of their sort of like very dry technical look. So these we used at our company just like I'm suggesting you use them. When we would go to pitch a client, we would have to have our RFQ. We're responding to a request for qualifications, and it's basically a resume of the company, and it's dry and boring. But we would throw in a couple of pages like this, and this is very specific to one thing that we did, flood studies. Nothing that I did, I promise you that, but that the company does. I laid out the page. I don't do the flood studies. And that we ended up with about a dozen of these. Single-family housing, golf courses, mixed-use development for all the different disciplines. And if we knew who we were pitching, we would select these individual pages based on that client. And you can do a similar thing once you start interviewing. If you know what the job is for, you can slant a cut sheet towards that. And so we would use these the same way you can use them. We would pitch them. It shows something more. It's something more than what's expected. And it's graphic, and everybody likes to look at pictures. No one might even read what we did at Plum Grove Estates, which was a real project. Everything on here is straight, engineering precision, and so on. So, but for you, it can be anything. Here are some past student samples that were successful. And you can see here, you recognize the layout, I hope at this point. Restaurants and food. It couldn't be more non-technical than restaurants and food, yet here it is. It's working just fine. And that's because this person followed the template exactly, which is what I recommend you do, and just inserted the content. This is potentially a very fast exercise to do, fast project to do. People fail at this because they think it's faster than it is. Like, this is a great photo. These are great photos. They're thoughtful photos. When you look at them, they're not the first thing that popped. They weren't the first thing at the top of a Google image search, right? Also, a good letterbox photo. She went with, I remember this student. She was actually very talented. She went with purple against my advice, but kind of pulls it off, and I can see why, because the page is so colorful. And she didn't want this to look all technical. I might have gone even a little darker with the purple and a little lighter with the yellow, sort of banana yellow going here. So very nice page, following the template to the letter. Now, didn't have a quantitative graphic, so she just put in a table. It works. Ultimately, you go with what you have, right? And this identity, back when the class used to be 16 weeks, there was group projects involved, and the groups would brand themselves. So this was like 3 or 4 students that came up with this logo and group name Simplicity. Here's another one, different group, different concept, but again, following exactly the template. This is the first one without the specials. And so big photo, open space, and the picture is about no open space. Thoughtful use of photograph. Here's the copy, here's the capsule description, the sort of executive summary, excellent letterbox photo. And the key technical things that are happening here, it really holds together. Maybe a little heavy on the drop shadow, on the quantitative graphic, but maybe not. The fade out of the photo, the fade out of this photo, reverse printing, white on black, and that's it. And don't crowd the page, maintain margins everywhere, and it'll sort of hold together. Here's that group's second one, and you can see it's quite nicely done. I think she may have photoshopped this flower into this picture. I'm not sure if she found it or not, but we get it. I mean, it's so on the nose, right? You know, it's almost like saccharine sweet, but you know, sometimes you just got to get these ideas out of your system. She had this idea, the contrast between the hope of spring and the decay of Rust Belt infrastructure, and okay, she did it. Whether she found it or put it together hardly matters for our purposes. It's the message, right? Here's a couple other ones, maybe a little less successful. I don't think maps are the best thing to use for the feature photo. I don't mind the abstract thing up here. It just got a little washed out. You shouldn't include something as a quantitative graphic if it's not legible. It can be reduced in size, but this just, it's not really legible. So noble first attempt. Looks like there might even be some warping going on with this map, which is a definite no-no. Somebody forgot to hold down shift. I can see the legend is definitely looking warped. Here's another pretty good one. This one I think is less successful because of the details. The letterbox photo is not quite as successful. I think that this full justification of the capsule description wants to be maybe carried through with full justification in the body text. I think if you print this up, you might find the body text is a little large. But lots of things to like about this. We got the quantitative graphic with a couple of extra minutes. This could be good and more legible. But it holds together pretty well. Here's another one. This might be the same group. A little loose in places. We've got too much margin here. Looks like they couldn't think of one more sentence to say, which is amazing. On the right track, right? The fade here is not quite on the nose. We don't want to see that left edge. We want to fade out to nothingness before the left edge. It can be left justified ragged right. That's not a problem. That's the easiest thing to do. You'll find that full justification can be quite a challenge when you're trying to set a page like that. So if you don't want to spend an extra easy half hour getting your text full justified, sometimes it means a rewrite, sometimes it means changing font, sometimes it means going line by line. You can go ragged right, left justified. That's perfectly fine. So this is still one of my favorites. She did the work on this one. Full justified throughout. Really nice page. Really holds together well. All right, I'm going to spin up InDesign here and get started. I'm going to use the Control-N shortcut key to bring up the new file dialog box. I'm familiar with this now from Illustrator. And here we can see a lot of the settings that we can either deal with now, and they can always be changed later too as well. I want to work in inches, not pica. Letter is the standard. Margins we can adjust now if we want. Half-inch margin for a letter size page is pretty routine, pretty standard. Neither too much nor too little. Margins, as you get to set, as you start laying out more pages, margins are one of the real tools that you have to create the feel of a page. Start paying attention to things like margins, and even if you consider like going back to week 1 in the Gutenberg Bible reading, look at the margins on that again. They're extremely modern, or look modern, because they're so generous. I'm going to gloss over all this for now. The only thing I want to focus on is this idea of facing pages. So this matters when you're doing a longer report, but since it's in the new document dialog, I just thought I should say something about it. We're only doing a 2-page document, but I'm going to, for the purposes of demonstrating facing pages, make a 6-page document. I'm going to deselect that to start and say create. And my document, my 6-page document, comes up, and if I zoom out, I'm using Alt scroll wheel, we can see the 6 pages. I can scroll out all the way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're like artboards in Illustrator, very much like artboards, in fact, in that the layering, it takes place for all the pages. Okay, that's not facing pages. Control N, new dialog box. I'm going to take all the same settings, but I'm just going to select the facing pages dialog. And here we see sort of the magic of InDesign starting to happen. InDesign will set this up like a booklet. So this would be the front cover. This would be the inside front cover as you experience, as you read a booklet. This would be page 1, page 2, inside back cover, and the back cover. Are you getting that? InDesign sets the pages so you can design experientially. This is what you're going to see. And then it'll do some calculation and output it in such a manner that it prints like a booklet. Now I've done something that you should never do, which is create a booklet with a number of pages that's not a multiple of 4. If you consider that this has to actually get printed on sheets of 11 by 17 paper at some point, you can see that this is one 11 by 17 sheet, this is the other side of that, and then I'm kind of left in the lurch here because I need another 11 by 17 sheet to make this happen. So when you're laying out actual booklets in the real world, you're going to do it in multiples of 4 only. But again, for our purposes, we're only doing a 2-pager to get our feet wet in InDesign. So let me set up that file that we actually want, and that's just going to be a 2-page file. It doesn't matter at all whether I do facing pages or not, because I'm creating 2 freestanding pages. But I'm going to go a little bit crazy if I have these pages not aligned. This is facing pages. It'll do it even with 2 pages. So for me, I don't want the facing pages. Okay, I want them right above each other. It's only 2 pages. It's simple. I'm going to close out those other files that I started. Okay, right off the bat, let me see if I can reset the Essentials Classic, and I want to make sure that my interface looks as much like yours as possible. So it looks very similar to Illustrator, and a lot of it is the same. This should be starting to become a little routine for you now as you're learning the software. So we've got a layers panel. We've got a stroke. This is right from Illustrator. We've got color. We've got a lot of palettes that are going to be useful to us in setting up pages. I'm not going to spend any time on that. Do watch the LinkedIn Learning videos. That's where you'll get the in-depth knowledge on all these software apps. I'm just taking you through the exercise. There's a lot more to know about all these applications. I'm just trying to get you through, tell you the rest of it, to get you through putting together a page, putting together an exercise. But each one of these software apps that we've talked about, Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, they're deep. This is what the pros use. This is if you look at an IKEA catalog, it was laid out in InDesign, almost certainly, right? This is what this is professional grade software. So layers are no surprise. We expect to see that. I'm going to make a few layers. Let's see. On top, almost always text, right? I know I'm going to have some photos. And I know I'm going to have some, let's see, text. Maybe I'll separate my text a little bit. This is going to be my body text. My other text layer, I'm going to say, is going to be my title and letterbox. That's the capsule description. And what else? Oh, I said I wanted a quantitative graphic, so there for graph, and maybe just one more text identity. I'm improvising this, right? I'm not working off of any plan, but that's not obvious. Okay, what's different in InDesign is this palette that we haven't seen before called Pages, and this is where InDesign starts to shine. Everything else, very much like Illustrator, nothing's different. But notice that I have my page 1. If I double click, it'll take me to page 2. Couldn't really tell because they're both empty. And then above there I have this thing called master pages. And master pages are where InDesign really shows what it's about. So if there's something that you want on every page, you can put it in a master page and then apply that master to the regular pages of your document. So I'm going to double click on the A master just to make it current. Now take care, because this is where I think InDesign lets us down a little bit. This looks just like a regular page, but I've got the A master current now, but there's no visual indicator that it is the A master, nothing. So the most common mistake that new InDesign users make is doing work in the master page when it should be on a document page, and doing work on a document page when it should be on a master page. So a master page is almost like a template that you can keep adjusting on the fly. So what do you want on every page of your document? Well, I want my identity on every page. I want maybe the title will be different, but this black bar might be the same. These two sort of letterbox features, that might be the same on every page. So it strikes me that I'll need another layer for that black bar. Actually, rule might be more of a proper name for it, although it could be too thick to be a rule, but let's say black rule. I'm going to make that current. I'm still in my A master page, and with my black rule layer current, I'm going to use the rectangle tool and draw a black rule and give it a fill and give it no outline. And you know, I like these to be rational numbers, so I'll tend to just freehand it in and then correct the height and width. And notice that my units are in pica. Here's a tip. You can right click on the rulers in the document and reset the units that you want, and notice all my units changed to what I wanted. You'll have to do both, the top and the side. So it's 8 inch. Oh, let's see. So I'll put it at the upper left-hand corner. 0.5 inches X, 0.5 inches Y. That's correct, right? Because I have a ½ inch margin. 7.5 inches wide. That makes sense. 8.5 minus a half minus a half. That's 7.5. But my height is approximate. I don't want that. I'm going to deal in rational numbers, so I'm going to make that an even ½ inch. And in my pages layer, you can even see that this master, because by default it's applied to all the pages I create, if I go to my pages now, you can see that it's got that black rule applied to them. So masters are a real time saver in that you can do something once and have it applied to many, many, many pages. And when you think about it, there's a lot of things in a document that you might want on every page. For example, a page number. In our case, we don't need it, but if we were laying out a report or something, you would put the page number in the master document. Now, this is the A master, that's the default. That's how it comes, more or less. You can make other masters, as many as you want. You can make masters based on masters, and this is where it gets confusing. You're going to want to like sort of crawl before you can walk on this topic. So I can make a master that incorporates the A master into it. So you have what's called nested master pages. It can get complex pretty quick. Trust me on that. So with the A master current, I'm just going to put in a rudimentary identity, because that's something I want on every page. I'm working fast and loose. Yours will be precise and beautiful. Lots of type controls in InDesign, as you might imagine, a software app that's designed to produce pages. I can't find them though. They're never around when I need them, so where do you go to find tools you can't find? From the window pull down. And here we'll look at type and tables, and we want character. And you might remember that character and paragraph sort of go together. And in fact, I'll combine them. I'll put them together. Will they go side by side? Yes, they will. So I'm just going to make this something that's not default. I don't really care what. I know that's terrible, but yours will be great. And because it's right aligned on the page, I'm going to go to paragraph and right align this text. That's one way of doing it. Certainly you don't have to do that. Okay, do I want my UIC logo on here? Maybe I do. Why not? Just Google UIC logos and see what we get. Oof, you gotta sign in for this now? What the hell? Okay, college logos, urban planning. And we've got different looks here. Oh, these are new. Well, they've redone this. I'm going to pick the what they call the informal. Notice we have JPEGs. We also have, here we go, EPS files. EPS is vector format. Illustrator will open that up, and so will InDesign. I'm going to go with a black EPS. CMYK or RGB EPS, that's different color spaces. For the level of work that we're doing, doesn't much matter. And CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, black, that's supposed to be for print environment. RGB, red, green, blue, that's supposed to be the color space for slides and projected art. But I've had printers go all different ways on this, so I've concluded that it doesn't much matter. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and download, especially for black, right? Can't matter. So I'm going to save that file, and I'm going to put that in the right place. And now back in InDesign, I can use the file place command, Control D, or I can just drag and drop it in. I'm dragging it from an off-screen directory and drop it in. You'll recall that you can, right from the start, get this to be sized correctly if you want. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now it looks kind of pixelated, but we said it was EPS, so there shouldn't be any pixels there. InDesign, the way it works is it displays things at a low res because these files get pretty big pretty quickly. So it's an EPS file. I know it is because I downloaded it. If you ever want to preview in full resolution, Shift W is the preview, and you can see it's not pixelated at all. It's going to be just fine. Yeah, it's awful stark, a lot of black and white. Okay, and that was in my A master file. So now if I look in my page files, I can see that it's all happening, right? So the master file is very useful for doing this type of thing. I'm not sure that anything else wants to be in my master file. Maybe the size of that letterbox, which I'm not sure how big I want it to be. So I'll use this rectangular frame tool and just draw. This is like a sort of placeholder for content. And this is, I'm going to make this 1.25, and it looks fine. It's quarter of an inch below. If I look at the Y value, it's a quarter of an inch down. It looks just fine. How does this look in our pages? It looks the same. But this is telling us how much space that letterbox should take up on both pages. So let's try populating a couple of these things. Let's go back to my layers. So that's I'm going to get out of the master environment now. I think this is all I'm going to want on every page. Everything else is going to be specific. I could lay out a frame for text if I want. I'll probably end up violating this at some point, but why not? Like, I can do that. Let's say this is going to be 3.5 inches, and I'm trying to keep it in rational numbers, height of 6 inches, and actually I want some room for a quantitative graphic, so maybe let's make it 5 inches. And then my other feature photo, I'm not sure, that's going to be different based on the photo, so that's what it is. Alternatively, if you don't like these frame tools, and I use them sometimes, other times I don't, you could just have a layer. Let's say you want to see something more. They're practically invisible, right? They're practically invisible. I suppose I could change the defaults. Sometimes I'll make a guidelines layer and it won't print. I'll make it non-printing. And then on that layer, I can draw things that are more visible, and it's okay, but I know it won't print, right? So that's another way to go. If it's drawn on the guidelines layer, you can check, it won't print. And of course, the frames never print. So I guess I'm just going to trace over just so you can see it. This was a poor choice to demonstrate. But frames on the screen looks fine. You can see that it's just enough. Just enough. Doesn't distract. This will distract when I go to you know, place my art on it. I'm seeing these rectangles. It's kind of distracting. Of course, once things are placed, I can always turn it off. Okay, so I'm in my page environment now. What's the title? Let's go to my layer, make my text title and letterbox current, and I'm just going to place some type. And I'm not going to put it right in that title bar yet. There we go. So I didn't want to start typing on there because I haven't set my color to white or anything, and it's black, and I'm not going to see it. So I'll type it in space so I don't start off lost. I'll make the color of the text. Notice I've selected the little text. I'll make that white, and I'll change the typeface to, let's go with Helvetica, nice and boring. And how big should it be? I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure. So I can ballpark this in space here, and it may be that everything's a little too big. I might have to come back and adjust this. This might be too thick. My black bar might be too thick. Everything might be just a little taking up too much room. So what I recommend doing, if you really want to commit to this, print up those samples, print up those templates, and put a ruler on them and see what we're actually working with there. How thick was that rule? What kind of margins did I actually set up? Or, you know, you can do a little trial and error on the fly here. So this is 12-point text, 14 for a title. That's pretty big. I feel that if I shift W, I feel that my bar might be a little much. So I'm just going to quickly go back to my master page, and I'm going to take that down a little bit, make the width for the height 0.35. There we go. It's looking a little more like it. Okay. And then here is where my letterbox photo goes. So let me quickly find a photo that might work. And I'm going to just drag and drop in this photo. Oh, I guess I should make my photo layer current. And notice when I drag and drop, it holds it on my cursor. That's nice. So the way this works is, if you look closely at the cursor, I can just pick a point and it'll come in at full size. Control Z to undo that. I can pick a shape and it'll use that as a clipping mask right off the bat. See how it's got the parentheses around the image on the cursor? And if I do that, it's clipped to that clipping mask, which is actually quite nice, considering it's not even on this page. It's in the master document. Control Z. See, it works on this one too. It works on any closed shape. Control Z. Or, you know, I can click and drag and dictate the size of that image. Now, it's not exactly a letterbox image, really, but that's okay, because if I keep in mind the examples, I only need part of that image, and then it's going to fade to black, or black's going to fade over it. So this is actually working for me, I think. Double click to go in the clipping mask mode. and I can scooch up that image, and it's kind of what I'm looking for. It's maybe a little big. Hold down Shift, resize the image a little bit. You guys recognize this, by the way? This is Belmont Harbor. We used to have a missile installation at Montrose Harbor in Chicago, also at the Point on 57th Street, back during the Cold War days. I'm going to resize it just a little more. I want to see some of the people. This building in back of it is still there. You can see that. That's Lakeshore Drive. Both of these buildings are still there. What I want to do actually is have this all the way to the right. So I'm stretching now my clipping mask frame is what I'm doing. And then I can move my photo. It behaves just like a clipping mask. If you're confused by this, go back and check the clipping mask video on LinkedIn Learning or something, because it becomes now the default photo behavior in InDesign. You may hate it at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's so much better. Like, everything's clipped, which makes perfect sense. And for this particular thing I'm doing, makes a lot of sense. And now it just needs that black fade, and I guess I need another. I'll use the black rule layer. I'll keep that current for my black masks. So I'm just going to draw some solid black past where I want it to fade. And there's going to be text on top of here too. But how do I get that fade? It's actually real easy, easier even than Photoshop. That's an effect, and you can go to the effects window, and here, this little FX flyout. I believe this is a gradient feather is what we're looking for here. And make sure the preview button is on, and we can start to see how it's having effect. And what we do here is adjust the stops, and that moves the fade point over, right? You can have a little bit of fade, or you can have a lot of fade. I'm gonna move this back. No, I'm not. I'm gonna do that. Move this almost all the way, and so I want to obscure that edge, right? Sometimes simpler is better. Maybe my frame needs to be a little bigger. That could be part of what's going on here. This effect doesn't build on itself, so I use that same tool to open it, and I'm adjusting what's already there. And that's looking pretty good. It's not quite obscuring that beginning part. I wonder why that is. One thing I could try doing is adding another stop. If I just click on this, it adds another black. Oh, I see what's going on. It's the opacity. Whoops. I added one accidentally to get rid of a stop. Just drag it away. This is a tool that takes a little getting used to. So with an extra stop in there, I've got a little more control, but sometimes you find that that's not the problem. In this case, I think maybe it was. So that's what I'm looking for. I don't want to see that square end of the photo, but I also don't want this black to run all the way, right? I'm going to accept that. So the photo should grow naturally, Shift W to preview, out of the black, and you shouldn't see any hard edges where either the photo ends or where the fade ends. Well, the fade ends to nothing, so that shouldn't be a problem. Maybe I'll stretch it just a bit. I want it to line up with the building. Don't go crazy with this. It's one of those things where you know, it looks like a big deal when you're doing it, but it's a detail. It's icing on the cake, right? And then more text on top of that. That's my title and letterbox. I'm going to copy this one down, Shift Alt to get it right in the same place. And I did that for two reasons. One, I wanted it in exactly the right place. And two, I noticed I want this to be reverse printing also, right? It's got to be white printing on top of that. because it's we're going on a black background, so we do what's called reverse printing. And let's see, let me just grab some dummy text. And I did a Windows copy, double click, I'm in the text command, Control A, select all, Control V to paste. And I can see that obviously my text is far too big for, I'm going to start by aligning it just to see how that goes. Now, light tends to not work. Light, skinny text tends to not work reverse printed. So you're going to want it to be more of a standard piece of text. I like light fonts. But not when you're reverse printing. So what happened here? I had them both selected. I lost my... how big should text be? Well, 11 used to be the standard in Microsoft Word. 10, I would say, is small text. I'm going to go with 10 on here. Honestly, don't know until you print it. All right, I've got a reverse type situation. It depends on a lot of factors. Legibility is like pornography. You know it when you see it. If it's too small, you can tell at a glance it's too small. That's not a pornography joke. That's a typography joke. So let's at least do a Shift W. It's looking pretty good, actually. This is looking pretty tight. So I like that. Okay, and that's kind of all of it. Placing photos, placing type, it's not complicated what we're doing. Notice I did this in the page, not in the master page. I don't want this on every page. And so what's the relationship of the two pages? Well, you may do two different topics. I recognize a lot of you are in first semester and you know, I'm asking you to show your expertise. You're like, well, I don't have any expertise yet. That's okay. Do what you're interested in. So this is an opportunity to take a sort of a quick research dive, quick and short research dive into the topic you think you're interested in. Or maybe it's an opportunity to explore something that you know you're not going to be studying. If you're a physical design major, maybe do a page on economic development, maybe do a page on transportation, learn a little bit about something that you know is going to be outside of your main area of study, right? Why not? Good opportunity. Applying that same concept, I think that a lot of people in this class learn that this kind of work is not for them. And that is a very valuable lesson to learn. If you don't enjoy doing this type of stuff, if you think the idea of sweating the font size and line spacing, if you think that is like insane and tedious, well, you've learned a very valuable lesson. You want to steer clear of jobs where you're going to be expected to do this kind of work. You know, maybe writing reports is more your thing. Maybe being out in the field is more your thing. Maybe doing calculations is more your thing. So that lesson has a lot of value, and it's good that you learned it early if you're one of those people. Okay, so let's see. What about my feature photo? I don't want to bail on this too quickly. Do I have a good feature photo for this? Maybe I do. Let me bring one in. Here's an interesting photo. Anyway, I'm going to make sure my photo layer is current. I don't know about the provenance or size of this photo, so I'm just going to pick a point and let it play out. The reason I do that is if it's a low res photo and it's I stretch it large, I want to know that. So this is telling me that this photo is big enough that I can actually use it. So this is kind of interesting. This was the radar installation that came with the missiles at Montrose Harbor, and you can see that people still went out there and partied and sort of did their thing, just like they still do now. And I don't know that it's that great of a photo. I don't know that it's like gonna do the job for this project, but maybe. I like the irony of it. I do like the incredible contrast between a radar installation and a guy on the lake playing frisbee. I do like that, but I don't know that it's high quality enough. I don't know that it's a good enough photo to use for a page like this. But if it were going to be my photo, I want to do a fade on it so that it fades out. And here's the critical area is where the text meets the photo. I want the photo to be under the text, but not to the point where it's making it illegible. So it's the same thing basically as up here, only it's really more critical now because this is the body text. It's got to be legible, right? So how am I going to fade out this photo? Well, I think I can select the photo and put a gradient feather right on that photo, and yeah, I can. So you can see just the angle is wrong. I've got these reversed, so I'm just going to switch the angle to 180, and that's giving me what I'm looking for. Here I'm going to need to maybe play a little bit with the, where the fade happens. I don't want it to be too, I want to see as much of the photo as possible. And this might be an area where I do want another stop for more control. This idea of adding stops takes a little practice. I'm just clicking there. That's how it adds them. And then if you want to take one away, just grab it and move it away. So it's easy enough to do. I always try and get it with one because it's just, the more you add, the more sort of convoluted it gets, right? So let's see what's going on here. That's not terrible. You never want it to be too abrupt, right? I'm going to wait and see how this plays out. Maybe this is where, well, I'll have to see. I'll have to place some text down there. Let's try it. Let's make my text layer current. Text body. Start another type command. And I'm going to just bring in some lorem ipsum. Make sure this matches my, here maybe I'll try a light font. And let's see, I've been going with 10 point. Looks like it's in the ballpark. It might work. Well, it definitely works up here. I like a little bit of the image under the text, but not so much that it's getting in the way. Okay, so this is getting pretty close. I don't think this photo ultimately is high enough quality for this purpose, but I guess I just like the photo and I like the message of it. I like the authenticity of it. This should probably have a title. Take care. Look at the samples. This might be your sourcing here instead of a client reference. Maybe you've got the source of some of the materials. The last thing I want to look at is the idea of a quantitative graphic. What makes this particularly work here is that I can put a little drop shadow behind it. Unfortunately, that means that it came from Excel. If you just do a graph in Excel and do a regular copy paste, it comes out as vector artwork. However, if you export it to an image file, not so, and you won't be able to do any drop shadow on the individual entities. So I'm guessing that you probably won't have actual original Excel graphics, so you'll be forced to deal with whatever you have. But keep that in mind. Just select in Excel, select your graph, do a Windows copy, go to like Illustrator, a vector program, do a Windows paste, and now you've got that as vector art. And Illustrator will drop right into here. So if you put a little drop shadow on it in Illustrator or here, it'll work out okay. For this, maybe I'll try a little map. So I don't have any quantitative graphics. So here's a map of, I think, Fallout. Obviously, you can't just, when you've got real text here, you can't just eliminate lines of text. Anyway, kind of cute. I like that it's colored. This is the exercise, pretty much, only with better images and, you know, obviously real content. I do a Shift W, looks pretty good. I'm kind of liking how the red plays off against this little bit of like greenish yellow, this sort of sickly mustard gas, the sepia tone here. Nice, I like this sort of use of color. I would need to add a proper title. If I was going to use this map, I would have to redo this text in a size that's legible, or at least title the map in a size that's legible. You can't have illegible text, well, ever. Okay, so that's basically it. A little bit about InDesign. Everything else in InDesign probably applies more to a multi-page booklet. And again, the key is master pages. Master pages. That's where your items that you want on every page go. Real time saver. Look, I'm already halfway there here. So this project is kind of just dragging and dropping stuff in, but it's very, I can't emphasize this enough. What you drag and drop in is very important. Okay, not to beat it to death. Fairly straightforward, I think, but that's only assuming that you've mastered all these other skills that we've been using in Illustrator and Photoshop and now putting it together in InDesign. So give it a shot. With an eye toward content, the layout is there for you. Look it up on the samples and just reproduce it and upload a couple of PDFs. And hopefully it's something you could use in your portfolio, maybe even show at an interview. Thanks for watching.